Okay, here we are, folks, back at our good old lunch table here in Eastburn or Edmonds kind of area. Oh, it's a messed up neighborhood. It's messed up. It used to be the poor area of town, and then they started building the condos here. It was first started at the old high school site, the Burnaby South site. Well, I showed you in that other video that there was high-rise apartments around here before. They built those in the 60s, 70s. Happy 420 from BC, by the way. Smoke them if you got them, motherfuckers, because you know it's always 420 somewhere in BC. I just finished my lunch here. Have a nice relaxing 420. Probably feel better off. I got lots of work done at the library, so I'm like, we're finally getting into the rhythm or getting a system set up here with the library and to use the computers and such. So hence with the cyberpunk lifestyle. But as I've been coming to the area a whole lot more and just hanging out in the old parks and the old areas where I used to hang out from time to time, not so more infrequently than, but still on a regular infrequent basis. This was always the immigrant area, and then they started putting up the condos. Now the condos weren't actually here, and this is the area where I show you there's empty houses all over the place. The applications for development, they're able to go through on the city they want to go through, but the people doing the development can't secure the credit. I'm now seeing listings on Facebook for $3.5 million to buy old rental stock houses, or not houses, the 8 and 10 and 12 apartment rentals. Somebody bought this stuff to plan to make it into a development because in the ad it says that it's already been approved for X number of more stories or more units of development. These motherfuckers that were late to the game got in way over their heads, and it was like that around here. Because like I said in that video in the morning, the condominium market had already, that whole K-shaped recovery, the K-shaped economy they tell us we're all in, this is what was going on in Vancouver more than 10 years back. The condominium projects, there was already canceling the startups, they were already canceling the plans on the development applications, and they'd have to go back and reassess and come up with a new development plan and then sell those condos pre-sale, imaginary, pretend box in the sky, sell you on an ideal, sell you on an advertisement that was in the pamphlet that you could hold in your hand. When it got time to be built, you couldn't hold it in your hand unless you opened the doorknob and it came out in your hand, because these fucking shit boxes weren't luxury condos. They were just absolute. I've worked on the luxury condos. The difference between those ones and the normal ones is only on the surface. To a greater or lesser extent, depends on the development, the general contractor, right? But as the market is finally in free fall, other channels, other people to finally tell you about it, and you'll finally believe it. I've been seeing this shit right in front of my own two eyes, shaking my head going, this is the stupidest. Why do you need foreigners to invest in your real estate? Because this has been the big program ever since, god damn it, basically the late 80s, the early 90s, with the takeover of Hong Kong, the Chinese takeover of Hong Kong, the Asian money that was going to come in and open up the early 90s when they opened up China into the Western markets more. And there was a flight of capital on the West Coast. Yeah, a lot more money went to San Francisco, but the money per capita, per the amounts, more of it per capita per diem was flooding into Vancouver. And they made it easier to do so. Well, way back at this time too, back in the 90s and 2000s, BC had flatlined on their population growth. The only reason why they could say that they had population growth, well, there was a bump for the millennials, but this is what I'm saying, around after the bump for the millennials, when the rates of new births were going down as these generational waves, right? They started to have to close or furlough schools almost, but they do renovations, and they had to import. So they were importing more people to stave off the population deficits. It's been this way ever since Trudeau PET #1 was in 1982. But after this point, well, I mean, he was in earlier than that, but they needed to have those populations go up. So they said, okay, well, you know, Canadians, you're not replaced. At this time, they said there was 1.3, 1.5 children per Canadian couple. But the immigrants, which are the only people in this park with their kids now, they're having more kids. So we're bringing in more immigrants with more kids, and then the population numbers are going up. But those weren't the people who were buying the condos. Who was buying the condos? Well, we had to have foreigners invest in the condos as an investment, as an asset. And this needed to be, so much of what the economy was based on was building empty boxes in the sky for foreigners who don't live here or who are doing some sort of immigration play. Well, that immigration play only takes several years, and then, you know, a lot of them, when the economy's gotten bad, they've sold out and jumped ship. Also, Vancouver is a port of entry, and all these immigrants, they land in Vancouver, our numbers go up, but they also disperse all throughout not just Canada, but also North America. More go to other parts of Canada, fewer percentage. Obviously, they just head to the US and get business started there. They might come here to Canada, start the permanent residency process, and then soon after, or at the same time, start their application to get into the USA. If they've got money, if they've got education, if they've got entrepreneurial skills or motivation or, you know, exuberance, what's that word? If they're in any way, well, I've said this before, but everybody who is entrepreneurial, they've left here because of the high taxes and all the bullshit and the low income, unless you're talking in the government or in the foreigner just off the boat markets. They had a lot of a new market playing to or working with their own community, their own ethnic enclaves, but that dries up eventually because there's no more people of affluence from that community, and there's only so many that can be imported, and then there's so many people with the want to move to this part of the world. So eventually these new bursts of people, they run themselves aground, and then you run out of market in that area where you have the dual language skills, and some of the newcomers have less of the language skills, and you can make use of these sorts of disparities to make your business. Whatever the business is, whether it's a corner store, a notary public, a lawyer, an immigration consultant, or whatever, right? There's just the whole scale. I'm speaking in generalities. So then, the condo market, it's already fucking going bust since 2015. But around these times, they started the whole ballooning of the bubble, the bell curve, right? Well, it's going to trail off sometime. So we're going from 1990 to 2015, let's say a 25-year block, where there was times in which it was profitable and the developers and the architects and the general contractors could make off with mad bank. Didn't happen all the time, happened sometimes periodically, but they started to focus on the sales to foreigners. That wasn't really happening so much in the 90s, and then when the 2000s come around, like, that's what I'm saying, it was such a small percentage even out here in Vancouver, sub 1%, less than different areas like Richmond, it would be maybe 1%. The rest of the Lower Mainland, it might be 0.5%, just because that's the Chinese enclave. So from that time to 2015, they were able to pump these holdings, these asset class of housing to the foreigners, and have good reason, and somehow in the macroeconomics it worked to have all these jobs and all these people building all these empty shoeboxes in the fucking sky, and all these stupid multifamily developments that made the competition, because those workforces and those land areas, and that was being used up by the more luxury market, the more holdings market, as opposed to the families who actually lived there and who actually wanted to create and generate tax base for the local economy. Those would still be happening too at this time. The middle class in the townhouse. Now in this area, I've taken you around to show you some of these townhouses, and they all got for sale signs. It's just like everywhere else. People got in over their heads, folks. So as this parallel market is taking off, people who were the charlatans, who were the Johnny-come-latelys, they saw that they could get into this market. That's when we have the Christy Clark bullshit in the Olympics, and the 2010 to 2015, and then in around 2014, 2015, there's a currency crisis and a credit crisis in the Asian markets. So there was a lot of flight of capital to hard assets. That's what we sold to the other side of the world. It was never like that, because they have more empty condos. Now, this time, they probably didn't have more empty condos than people. Now they do. So these luxury asset class buildings that we were building, also in this time, we were getting more and more foreign workers. So they're also taking up housing, competing with the workers, the blue-collar markets. All this area around here used to be these blue-collar, low-rise, cheaper rentals, working-class area. Now we've got the luxury condos all over the place. The area that I was in earlier today was really shitbox farmlands, like the cheapest of the cheap, and then they went right from there to luxury condos on the edge of the forest. They've since had to scale down in these luxury, the higher, the more falutin price areas, to the townhouse stuff, so that they could still build and build out and still charge higher rates, but not be on the hook for massive development costs that weren't being realized, because these pre-sales, like I said, around 2015, they were already losing out and not being, because people couldn't, they had priced the working class out, but the professional, the white collar class, out of the market in the middle. So as we go through and we find that these markets are competing, the people who actually live here, with the fantasy market, the bullshit on the golf course between the guy who works for the city council member and the lawyer who works for the developers, and the guy who works at the sales place on the golf course out there at UBC, kind of insider land sharking trading, that never stopped. The whole way through, they always have an abundance of stuff, land, projects, materials, ability, contractors, development companies, the individual havoc or form work or framing or electrical companies. They already have those resources on call, at hand, here, and they chose to build for this foreign market, the fantasy marketplace, more and more and more, until it's already starting to run out. Now, As we know, ever since 2008, there's been a recession North America wide that they've been covering up with the wallpaper quantitative easing bullshit printing of, which for the USA is okay because they're a reserve currency, and so everybody still wants American dollars. So when Canada does the same thing, much like we've seen these problems with the Japan carrier trade that are coming to a head again, like they did in the 80s, like they've done at other times. There's like these series of the guy on the euro dollar system was going over, but he was just talking in the last 20 years and stuff. Anyways, Canada is just that 400% spike in the overprinting of Canadian bonds that's been going on ever since Carney started advising so they were able to flummox everybody and throw more cash, like as though they're in a rap video or some bullshit, at these condos to keep people in that K-shaped economy, building the luxury condos to hold empty as assets on somebody, or for some reason, or maybe on companies' balance books. Actually, a lot of them are real estate companies' balance books. If they didn't need to pull out of the market, they wouldn't need a bailout. They would just let them sit there, let the neighbors sell their place, and then keep it at that approximation in value or whatever the hell they are. There are so few fucking people here this whole time. Since the 90s, the population numbers they've been telling you are going up, and they're going up through immigration. But that hasn't been happening. They've been lying to you. Those numbers, they make the initial spike, and as I said, BC, they move off and other people from other parts of Canada come out west here. So they're counting them as they come in, but not as they leave. Same as the voting rolls. Then they've been, when they had a lot of competition for the blue collar, the marketplace rent went up because of this last 25 years of fantasy market that had gone in and infiltrated neighborhood after neighborhood. They couldn't just keep it all on one side of the damn city and leave us working type folks someplace where we could. No, they just moved in each area around the thoroughfares, the commercial activity, the community centers, whatever seemed nice on paper that they could sell, pre-sale in the fantasy market. That's where 9/10 of the ballooning of the property market came from. People would come in, buy one place, leave it empty, list it for double what the other houses were in that area. They would come in, they would build a McMansion, it wouldn't sell, they'd list it for quadruple, multi-millions. I'm talking even back in the 90s. It was all a scam. Those people worked for the land sharking real estate companies and Aquilinis or the old money in the fucking area. Some sort of fucking conglomerate mafia of fucking, oh, actually, if you fucking do this and just sit on that shit, you can eat the taxes at $5,000 a year, and you can have this amount of money borrowed so that you can play these markets, so that you can generate that income that is far in excess of what it costs to hold that empty lot, which to my understanding is virtually nothing on an empty lot. You only get taxed if you got a house there and you actually got a shitter going into sewer. Anyways, I don't know. These sorts of fine details we should do more research on. But the point is that they can only build the cheapest affordable fucking housing for the bums now, and they can't get people into that. That's not even filling up because that's too expensive. Or they can build the luxury condos, and there's no other starts. Hence the K-shape on the building market for these fucking condos. They're telling you on these real estate shows though that 2027, 2028, they're going to be another economy of scale that's going to come back, and they're not talking about a saved market, but they're talking about an improved market. So rentals and building of more multiplex family housing. But the thing is, the birth rates, they've also been telling you ever since Trudeau's time, they haven't kept up. So we need to get all these more immigrants. More immigrants have kids, yeah, but that's the first generation. Then they're right back to the normal Canadian numbers. It is so fucking tough and so corrupt living here, and they just follow along with what's going on around them. And the numbers, you know, I'm exaggerating to make a point, but the numbers do show these sorts of trends. So we know we're out here in BC, we have the highest abortion rates. We have the lowest birth rates per couple. We do have some very high immigration rates, but this is trailing off and dispersing, and or they head back home of their own self-deport, of their own volition. Then they're telling you that there's this housing crisis and there's nowhere to build, and every direction you look there's fucking empty space. The whole thing that they have done and said in the whole housing property market my whole fucking life has always been a fraud. Similar to the fraud that they're trying to commit now, to like, can't we just build like bridges or roadways or warehouses or something else other than the same fucking leaky condos again and again? There's got to be some other thing. But they say, oh well, we need more housing, we need to build more rental apartments. This is their solution, when they can't even rent them out, and the people with the basements that they're renting out, and they have the old numbers, maybe they were making more before, but they could just rent them out for, you know, 30% less than what they could have gotten in the past. And they can go back, they're not charging no $2,000 a head anymore. Maybe some of these places can stay afloat, but I don't know. Everybody's moving back into something like that, or they've already been living there for a while at an older rate of rent. Anybody who's been on that rent cycle, they've left. And there's no more jobs, and they've left too. So we're still dealing with this population deficit. And yeah, if we were flooding the place with massive unchecked immigration again, but as we know, even that's not happening. All we're getting is UN refugees, or, my God, I don't know. It's not good, whatever it is. Criminals who've had to change their names 3 times over to get on the student visa program. I don't know. I gotta get going. But the point is, we did it to ourselves. We did it to our own neighbors. And the fraud runs deep around here, folks. It's just, there's nobody to rent. The Interfor is leaving its Burnaby office. Where's, whatever, I'm getting beside the point. This has gone on and started rambling and stuff. Nevertheless, I did make some good points earlier. It's just not a 3-minute fucking video again. 23 fucking minutes. There's a siren, so whatever that's about. Good note to end on. Enjoy your fucking off now.